The combine is over, which means it's mock draft season. So, who are the players that will get their names called for the Indianapolis Colts in April? Where will Noah and I go with our mock draft selections? And who do you, the fans, want to see drafted most? Well, guess what? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. My name is Drake Wally, deputy editor for the site and co-host of this podcast. And of course, I'm joined down here this time by the one and only Noah Gebert, analyst for the site and fellow co-host of this show. Noah, I'm so excited about this. This is nice and laid back, and it's something that all the fans really like to get involved in. And plus, we're really going to use, our best judgment here. We're not going to try to, take any ridiculous picks that aren't realistic. We're going to really try to think like Chris Ballard, which number one means, you're probably not going to spend a lot in free agent. I'm just kidding. That's not what we're talking about. But we're really going to try to use a GM's type of mind here because the Colts have so much that they need to address in this draft. So this is going to be a good one. How you doing, pal?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Been battling cold, so I might sound a little bit more like Ray Romano than usual with my with my nasals. But yeah, no, it's fun. I'm excited. I know every draft fan, NFL fan during the offseason, just because it's so long, is going to be doing 100, 150 of these before April comes. Just doing all these. We have a ton of mock draft simulators. I think we're spoiled kind of as an NFL fan base. All these different sites bringing up different simulators, so you get something different every time. We'll be going with the PFF simulator today, which I think has become pretty commonplace. But no, excited to do this with you, man. Just from doing the shows in the past, we kind of know how we feel about certain prospects, but we've really gone into this with no collaboration, no discussion of what the game plan is going in, and really not a huge idea on how we stack these guys up vertically. We know kind of that we like a couple of these guys that we're going to name off, but when we're comparing one guy at one position versus another guy at another position, when it comes down to these picks, we really don't know which way we're going to go.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where based off because we're going to be going. Let's see, we got care for positional value. We'll probably bump that up. We might, go with a little bit more draft needs and less randomness. So, I mean, we're going to make this as absolutely realistic and difficult as possible because we are going to see teams fighting to get the picks that they need. That's how the draft happens every single year. But we're going to go ahead and start out with Truett Trussler, longtime listener. This ought to be fun. Ballard, last draft. He needs to draft like it is.
Yeah.
He needs to absolutely treat this like he's never treated the draft before. He needs to take some swings. And like I said, we're going to be thinking like Chris Ballard, not to say that we're not going to try to take a swing or two, but we're going to be thinking like our jobs are on the line. And really every GM's job is on the line, but none more than Chris Ballard. And then of course, Sean Conkright, thank you so much for joining. Hello to you. And as people kind of come into the comments here and into the chat and into the show, we will address them as such. So, man, let's just go ahead and dive right into this. So the Indianapolis Colts in their first round have the number 14 overall pick. Now, this is such a weird spot to be in just because, you're dealing with the dead center of the first round. And when you get there, anything could be really on the board. Obviously there's going to be some guys that they're wanting to have more than others that are going to be gone because they're top 10 talents. We'll see if Tyler Warren's there. We'll see if Malachi Starks is there. We'll see if a cornerback is there. There's a lot of possibilities, but Noah, I do got to say the 14th spot, it's kind of like, mediocre because it means you didn't do bad. You didn't do good, but it means you don't have a high pick, but you also, aren't later in the round because you didn't succeed.
Yeah, kind of where you expect the Colts to be at this kind of stage, where they're not pushing for playoff position, so you're not getting picks in the 20s, and you're not in a full blown rebuild, so you're not picking top 5, top 10 to be able to maybe snag I would say a quarterback at this point because you need to change the direction of the franchise if you have that opportunity. But I mean, yeah, you're just kind of sitting somewhere in the middle like they were last year, and maybe at that 14 spot, somebody you really like falls to you. I think you have a good chance of that happening. When you're picking this early in the teens, but yeah, not an ideal situation to be in.
Yeah, and we already got Tony Pelletieri here is talking just like Chris Ballard. He says trade back. That's all he says is trade back. But David Burrows says Drake, the man for the Colts, cups up. Cups up to you too, David. I'll definitely give you a shout out here in a second in that regard. But let's go ahead and dive right into this. So
Yeah.
before we even go, we've got care for positional value is good. Draft needs are good. This is going to be a difficult draft to get who we want. So let's just go ahead and jump into this. First round pick number 14. Let's see who starts falling.
All right, we're probably assuming that a trade up is a lot less likely than a trade back in terms of Chris Ballard. Just before we even start off, is there anybody that you would be willing to trade up for, you personally, Drake, that if they maybe fall to pick 9 and they're still sitting there, is that something you consider? I'd imagine anything higher than that, maybe out of range for the Colts in terms of what they're able to give up. But is there anybody that sticks out on your board that would just be an immediate impact maker for the Colts, fills the need, fits the team, fits the scheme, and everything just kind of works out? Is there any names that you're kind of watching to see if they fall here?
I honestly would say Nick Emanwari or Malachi Starks, only because you don't have the safety depth like you do tight end. I understand the love for Tyler Warren, but look, guys, you could get a guy like Mason Taylor day 2. You could get a guy. I know that he was hurt. But you could get a guy like Gunnar Helm later. There's multiple guys. Colston Loveland will definitely be available when the Colts pick. So at 14, so we'll have to see. But I would take a defender if you really want one, because there's not as much depth there as there is tight end.
Yeah, and then it gets into the question of which positions do you feel like are even worth making that move up for. I mean, it's got to be a really special player. We'll just jump ahead. I've got it on slow mode. We'll see how fast that really goes, and we'll just kind of hit pick 14 and see where we're sitting there.
Let's go ahead and kick it off.
All right, Travis Hunter. They're going there first overall, the Titans. We won't read all these out. Looks like they're going a little bit faster than I'm going to be able to talk. So we'll just see where we're sitting at when we get to 14. A couple of the tackles coming off the board early. So that's going to be, I think, a sigh of relief for a lot of Colt fans watching that don't want Chris Ballard to go on to the offensive line with that first selection.
Oh, there goes Tyler Warren to the Carolina Panthers for Bryce Young. That's a good one from the Bears. Tetaroa McMillan.
Yep, and then the Shamar Stewart, that athletic testing freak that we thought maybe would be a Chris Ballard kind of target. And Jahad Campbell off the board at 13 to the Dolphins right before the Colts get on the clock. And that would have been something intriguing that I would have liked to consider. But nonetheless, not on the board. We'll take a look at kind of the top-rated players that are on the board available for the Colts at pick 14 in this specific mock draft. Looks like Malachi Starks sitting there, top-rated player on PFF's board at least. James Pierce Jr., the edge defender out of Tennessee. Are there any other names that are sticking out to you immediately?
You know what, man? They need corners so bad.
Yeah.
And it's like Malachi Starks is sitting right there, but so is Will Johnson.
Yeah.
That
comes into positional value in terms of that discussion there. If you feel like Malachi Starks is maybe a little bit better of a player than Will Johnson, is it enough to offset the fact that corner generally is more of a valuable position to have than a safety?
Yes, it does, because I didn't expect Will Johnson to be sitting there at 14. Yeah. I'm personally going with Will Johnson because it's an oxymoron here. There is still safeties you can get later, but there's not safeties like there are tight ends. So, Michael Williams is another great pick. So is Darius Alexander, small school guy. Walter Nolan sitting right there.
One of your guys.
Colston Loveland, Jalen Walker. Oh, good Lord, man.
Jalen Walker's interesting, too, if you want somebody kind of in that Jahad Campbell mold. If you were sold on adding something like that to your defense and Jahad Campbell goes off the board one pick before you, Jalen Walker's a nice consolation prize, who maybe is a little bit more of an edge defender than a linebacker. It depends where you want to put him.
Man, for me, I just think that you got to go corner here. I did not expect Will Johnson to be sitting there. He's, by some regards, some have him as like a top corner. Yeah. I'm going Will Johnson because while I did say what I said earlier, I just did not expect a corner to be sitting there, and one of the best at that.
Yeah, for sure. I think Malachi Starks is an obvious choice just because of how well he would fit the scheme, the obvious need at safety. But, I mean, when you take a look at the depth chart that the Colts have right now at cornerback, you're really banking on Sam Womack, who has been, up to this point in his career, essentially a special teamer. You're kind of banking on what his performance was last year to not only be as good as it was, but to take a step up. Because even with the play of Sam Womack and Jalen Jones last year, I don't think you feel comfortable with those two being your two guys out on the outside. Yeah, I think Will Johnson's a guy throughout this process I've been high on. Absolutely have been high on the cornerback position, and that being a huge need for the Colts all throughout last offseason when we were talking about those mock drafts going out. Guys like Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, that could possibly fall to the Colts at Terrion Arnold and at pick 13 last year. And I seem like I kind of made the argument that you kind of have what you have in a first round corner isn't going to impact the bottom line of that first season as much as some other positions might. So I'm kind of in the back of my head thinking this might be Chris Ballard's last shot at it. Is a first round corner going to impact the defense? And I think even more so than last year. I think corner's going to be a more impactful selection than it would have been the previous year.
Yeah, and before we even continue, I think we're both on the same side here. But the reason that you got to go corner in this situation we're in is because of the ambiguity around Juju Brents.
Yeah.
Man, there's nothing that's instilling confidence in the Colts defensive staff that he can stay healthy. He has been more injury prone, dare I say it, than Anthony Richardson has. I think he's played 11 games out of 34. Richardson's at least played 15. So I'm going Will Johnson here. It breaks my heart to not get Malachi Starks, but good Lord, man, that you can replace a safety, I think, easier than you can a corner, especially in their situation. So I don't know about you, but I'm going Michigan here. I'm going with Will Johnson.
I'm leaning that way also, but just to play devil's advocate here, we do have a PFF premium here, so we do have trade options available, and it looks like we've got 5 people hitting us up on the phone to offer trades. So is there anything you want to – we'll throw up these trades, and we'll see if there's anything catching your eye. I guess this is just – the offers are so much these teams are willing to move up, not so much that they're giving us the selection of picks. So we would have to choose the picks that we would be trading. Looks like the Bengals at 17, Seahawks at 18, Packers at 23, and anything beyond that you'd be trading into the second round. So those would be the teams that are available. I mean, moving back even 3 spots is a little bit risky if you feel like Will Johnson and Malachi Starks are your 1 and 2, and then beyond that you're kind of not as happy with the selections. I mean, there's still going to be some people you're happy with, but I think those two, I think for both of us, are in a tier to themselves at this point.
Yeah, as much as because there are times where I love trading back if it makes sense, right? But in this case, you got to take a corner. You can't screw around with this position. You can't be cute. You got to take a corner, man. We might trade back at some point, but man, I'm going Will Johnson. I just think that you have to address it this time because, I mean, right there, Trey Amos. I mean, he's a player, right?
Yeah.
But he's that you can't say, hey, we're going to get the next best cornerback here later.
Yeah. Your boy Siobhan Ravel down there, also. I know you like him. Big fan of him.
Oh yeah. So is Darian Porter. Oh my God, look at those guys. Oh man. But yeah, man, I'm going Will Johnson here.
I'm happy to make that selection. Obviously, this one is the biggest one. Pick 14 is going to be the one that has the most hinging on it or the most riding on it. So we're going to spend the most time on that one. I realize we're 15 minutes in. We haven't made a pick yet. So we're going to go ahead and take Will Johnson here with that
only
first
7.
pick. Definitely people in the chat. I know you're watching. I know you see the names available. I know you all have your opinions. Throw out the name of who we should have taken and why this is a big mistake for us taking Will Johnson here in the first round. But we'll go ahead and select him.
Colton Rich, real quick, with Lou getting his guys, they have worked extensively with DBs. I'd say Starks, Warrior, or Johnson will easily be in consideration. So, Colton, we picked your guy, man. We picked one of your guys. We picked Johnson. And then, of course, Donald Markham says that you can draft a safety in the second round. I absolutely agree. And there's corners, there's dogs in that second round. But, man, you got to get yourself a true first rounder. And I think we made the right choice here. And look, if Warren's gone, if Starks is even sitting there, all right, unless it's Warrior, I'm higher on Warrior's potential than I am Starks's. And if Warren's gone and Warren's gone, and you're sitting there at 14, and Will Johnson's staring you in the face. I think it'd be crazy to pass that guy up.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
It looks like in this simulation we saw Warren go off the board at 20, and then Starks fall all the way down to 24. So when you've got those guys, maybe the next guy up at the safety position, you're thinking maybe Xavier Watts could be in play if he falls to this pick in the second round. Obviously didn't address tight end here. I know you're a big Mason Taylor guy. If he's there available, I would argue maybe that's too early to take a guy like Mason Taylor in the second round at tight end, but we'll see how it rolls out. We've got about 6 picks away before we pop back up here.
Oh, man. Uman Milan's another good one. Jack Beck. That's a good pick for the Saints. Tyleek Williams. That's a good one for the Bears.
There goes Watts.
No.
And it has to happen like that. Otherwise, things would be too easy for us. You've got Siobhan Ravel still picking it or sitting up here. If you completely want to revamp your corner spot, but then you're banking on 2 rookie corners there starting for you. So that's a different conversation we'd be having there.
Goodness, man, that is this is a tough spot to be in because you really could afford to double dip at corner back to back. You know what I mean? Like, but you do. Who are some of the other guys past 46 there?
Gotcha. So we're scrolling down here. Just while I'm scrolling down to show the names, is there any needs immediately that are jumping out to you? Obviously, safety is going to be one of them. What are some of the other positions you're considering or looking for here?
Rank number 33 right there, linebacker. That's really hard for me not to say Demetrius Knight because he's a multi-role linebacker that's going to give you so much. Oh my God, Cam Scattaboo. That's another good one. Schwessinger's another good one. Jack Sawyer's he's going to be a hell of a football player. Of course, Darian Porter's still sitting there too. Azariah Thomas, he's sitting there. Man, there's some guys. Benjamin Morrison, he has some bad injury history. So that's a guy that you just unfortunately have to pass on. Mason Taylor looks like he's going to be available. RJ Harvey, Sebastian Castro. That's another sleeper safety, actually.
So let's just go by position here. Safety is obviously the one we had the opportunity to address in the first round and chose not to do. Then we see Emin Wari come off the board, Starks come off the board, Xavier Watts come off the board. So just sitting where we are at safety, in terms of just value here, I think it's looking pretty rough where you've got Sebastian Castro, whose average draft position is around pick 80. So that'd be about a round too early for the next best guy. Some other names, Lathan Ransom, I know we've talked about out of Ohio State. Just doesn't seem like the value's there at safety anymore to be able to address that and really feel confident having it or pulling out a starter here. So that's maybe something you hope that you had the opportunity to do in free agency is to add somebody on the back end there.
Exactly.
But other positions of need, I know offensive line's kind of sneaky, just in terms of positional value here. Not sure you've got exactly what you're looking for. Nothing's really jumping out at you.
There's some guys there for sure, but I think you got to keep going defense here.
Yeah,
I mean, Tate Ratledge, he's a monster.
And obviously, tight end, we're looking at Elijah Arroyo, Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson. Ferguson's one of those guys that we talked about in the last episode. As post-combine, he's kind of emerged as a Chris Ballard type or a Colts kind of target, or what could be a target there for tight end for the Colts.
So, I mean, it's one of those things where I think that you might even be able to go best player available here. Yeah, cornerback, Trey Amos, Siobhan
It's hard
Ravel.
to not take one of those corners again, seeing what's there. That seems like that's where the value is, which makes us regret maybe a little bit. I know you're going to be excited about getting a guy like Will Johnson, but when you see some of these names that are available at the second pick, but I mean, man, hard to predict going into round one what's going to be there in the second round. You just got to trust your gut with the guy.
Yeah, and there's going to be linebackers that I think you can still get. There's still, believe it or not, there's still going to be competent safeties. Man, for me, I'm okay with double dipping at corner your first 2 rounds. That's just me, because good Lord, I'm telling you, man, guys, it's a slot corner in Kenny Moore, and then you've got outside corners. Your only other 2 options really that are proven to some degree. It's going to be Sam Womack III. Okay, again, waiver selection, and then you've got Jalen Jones, who is just continues to ascend, but he's still working things out. He's like 21 years old, 22, something like that. My personal pick, I would go with Siobhan Revell. I
Yeah.
know that he's coming off of an injury and all that. Whatever, dude. The guy is an absolute ball hawk, and he's going to fit well with what Anarumo wants to do. He's been mocked to the Colts before. I am okay with going Siobhan Revell round 2 because you still have tight end depth,
Mhm.
you've still got linebacker depth, and you will still be able to get a competent safety.
Yeah, and I see we've got somebody in the chat, Bruce Brazel, talking about Ollie Gordon. So I'll just throw up the
Mm.
names here at running back. I know that's obviously a popular position that people are going to be paying attention to.
Bruce Brazel's a good one, man. That is, yeah.
We've got Devin Neal down there who might be able to be grabbed a little bit later. It seems like Ollie Gordon may be off the board at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Scatabo, everybody's favorite, is sitting there at the top of the charts for running backs. But man, I have a tendency to agree with you. I think before any of these other guys, I know Demetrius Knight's going to be a good player. I don't think that I'm willing to make that pick with him there. While you've got those, I think 3 corners on the board that I would rather have. So yeah, let me go back to the corners because I think it sounds like we've essentially decided on double dipping at corner in the first 2 rounds, which is an aggressive approach, but I'm okay with it.
Oh, and it's also you've got Lou Anarumo. You got to
Yeah.
give this guy some talent. I know that he's a veteran guy, but he also needs to adjust. All right,
Yep.
he's with a new team. He's going to be having new players. You can't just be a coordinator that does well with veterans because how often are you just going to have a slew of guys that have been in the NFL for 4
hmm
plus years? It's not very often. So he's going to have to teach some of these guys. Plus, they're going to get to learn from Kenny Moore. They're going to get to learn from a guy like Jalen Jones that's had to climb the ranks and prove naysayers wrong. So, and dare I say it, God forbid, if Juju Brent stays healthy, people, then you've got 2 additional cornerbacks. You have
Yep.
5 cornerbacks that can really start and go out there and you can implement different packages. If you're going pass heavy, pass defense heavy, you can put a 4th and 5th corner out there. I mean, there's a lot of ways to address the defense if you
Yep.
double dip. But I know Trey Amos is there. I know Darian Porter's there. Again, my chest is tightening up not taking Darian Porter, but I gotta say Siobhan Revell. The upside is just too much to ignore.
Yeah, I'm
So
okay with it. And another thing I'm going to say to justify this, if you just take Will Johnson, you're 1 play away from being back to where you started at corner, which is just an awful situation to be in, where you're essentially relying on Sam Womack and Jalen Jones to be your outside starting duo, which isn't the best situation to be in. So I don't think it's going to hurt. If we go with Siobhan Revell. Hopefully those medicals check out. But yeah, just the production that he had on the field in the short time that he was on the field this past season, and the athleticism that you see on tape, I think this is a guy with the traits that you want to take a chance on.
yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. Go ahead and select Siobhan Revell, and guess what, people? We don't have to pick another corner now. I mean, I'm pretty sure that unless we somehow trade back and collect a couple extra picks, I mean, I'm okay. But like right here, you need athleticism in the secondary to disguise coverages. I mean, Lou Anarumo is a wizard.
Yep.
Okay, he's not going to be simple. He's going to bring a lot of different looks. Keep in mind, man, he befuddled the one and only Patrick Mahomes when Cincinnati went to the Super Bowl. Okay, I mean, Patrick Mahomes did not know what the heck to do with defensive linemen that were dropping back in coverage. So, like, there's all sorts of things he's going to implement. But next is going to be round 3, pick number 16, Xavier Restrepo. Travion Henderson. That's a good one. Oh, man, that's another good one. Azariah Thomas.
Yeah.
Okay. Jack Sawyer.
I would have been okay with taking Azariah Thomas there at that pick.
Yeah.
I feel like he fits what the Colts are looking for also. I mean, it's hard to tell. I'm not going to sit here and say I know the minutia between the talent evaluations of those 3 guys, but those are just 3 names that pop up off the board. See Jackson Dart go in there at pick 65. So maybe we take a look at the quarterbacks to see how things are looking, see if there's anything on the board that we would consider there.
No, man, it's going to be Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Let's
We've heard it, man.
let's just bench Richardson. Just bench him and show him no confidence and bring in the most expensive freaking free agent you can find. I hope to God they don't do that. You have to see it out. You know what I mean? You got to see it out with Richardson. You can't just say, 2 bad seasons. Let's get rid of the kid. You just you just can't do that. I
Yeah,
hope it's
unless
someone like Daniel
yeah.
Jones.
Yeah, unless somebody falls to you in the draft that you're really excited about. At least if that happens, you're not paying $30 million for a quarterback that you're not 100% on. So draft seems like the way to go unless you're getting somebody that's going to be that Daniel Jones, Trey Lance level competition for Anthony Richardson there. Here we are, pick 80 in the third round. While we were talking there, a couple of guys that we liked came off the board. There's Cam Scattaboo going at
Hmm.
73,
It's
Mason
a good one
Taylor at
though.
71, Darian
Okay.
Porter at 70. So
Okay.
those are some big names that would be pretty high on our big boards.
Hmm.
Not available for the Colts here at pick 80.
Yeah. So scroll down just a bit for best overall. Let's just see who's okay.
Any names popping out at you here?
Yeah, there's a couple.
Tate Ratledge
Ooh.
sitting there in the third. Jeffrey Bassa, Nathan Ransom, uh, Devin
Let's keep
Neal.
going down until we see a. Oh my God! There. Oh my God! If the Colts want to really piss a lot of fans off, they could always draft. They could always draft Harold Fannin. Um, oh, Gunnar Helm is down there, dude. I'm so tempted to trade back.
So just taking a look at quarterbacks. Milrow, Will Howard, Riley Leonard falls off a little bit. Tyler Shook is not rated very highly by PFF, but I know some other places have him rated quite a bit higher. That tends to be the names that you're maybe looking at quarterback. Quinn Ewers, a lot of people talk about Dylan Gabriel. Is there anything there at the quarterback position that you're willing to take that chance on?
No.
All right.
Nope. Nope.
Simple
Nope. None of
one
those
word
guys.
answer. I like it.
No. Yeah. Um, My goodness, I don't think that you need. I mean, look at all that talent in at
Mhm.
running back. I mean, you still. I mean, Jarquez Hunter's another good one. Trevor Etienne's
ETN.
another. I think that Marcus Yarns is a guy by Shul Tootin, ball security issues, but man, oh
Oh,
man,
there is Ollie Gordon down here.
yeah, man. So there, I'm not even worried about. Montrell Johnson's another good one. He played
Yeah,
with Richardson. I'm not even worried about running back. You can get
not on the
yourself.
radar. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and plus you can sign someone.
Obviously,
You know,
receiver we'll take a look at quickly. I'm not sure. With the other needs that we want to fill, we
Pat
may want to
Bryant.
spend. Pat Bryant's
Pat
down
Bryant's a
there.
nasty. He's a nasty customer. Ricky White. I remember actually talking to him. Uh, so there's some guys there. I just don't think that you really need to worry about running back. Now go to tight end real
Tight end
quick. What
here.
are we looking at there? Okay. Okay.
It's definitely thinning out a bit.
Mm-hmm.
There's Fedoni down here who could be a target.
Uh-huh.
Terrence Ferguson up there in the third.
Okay. Okay.
Ricochet, Aronde Gadsden, I like.
You know what? Hmm. I would say go back to best overall. Let's see. Let's see one more time what we've got sitting right
All
there,
right.
because this is going to be a difficult decision to make
Mm-hmm.
here. Okay, because we still haven't addressed safety, but there is a scroll down just a bit. I think there's a safety that we could get
Kevin
from
Winston Jr. there from Penn State.
OSU. Let's see if he's
Lathan
got.
Ransom down there in the third.
Okay, and he might fall.
He is projected to go pick 89.9 on average, and we're at 80. So if we're hoping to get him in round four, the odds are not super high.
Okay.
So let's just narrow it down. I know you love Jeffrey Bassa. Linebacker's a big need. I'm going to throw his name in the hat as a possible selection. Lathan Ransom, we might be in a position, depending on what happened in free agency, where we desperately still need to add a safety just because of what's on the roster. It does feel a little weird going DB round 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
But with the
no.
lack of talent that you have in that group currently, it's not out of the question. Tate Ratledge at guard. Depending on what happens, there's a lot of questions the Colts need to answer in the next few weeks. What's going to happen with the offensive line moving forward? So, depending on what happens in free agency, that could be a very serious discussion about adding somebody with that talent level in the third or on day two here on the interior or on the exterior of the offensive line. Safety's still the biggest glaring need, I'd say. Tight end, obviously, we haven't addressed. So you've got guys like Terrence Ferguson, Harold Fannin, Thomas Fidone, I think could be a target, someone we try to grab later. I'm not sure if you get to that point if you're adding a starter day one. So yeah, I mean, just this kind of reinforces the amount of holes that are on the Colts roster and the things that they can do next week coming into free agency to kind of reduce their need to pinhole reduce how much they're pinholing themselves when it comes to the draft.
Yeah, and like, go ahead real quick before we pick, because I know we got to get going here, but go ahead and go to safety real quick one more time.
Okay.
Because that is okay.
I think we've got the same safeties here that we had in round 2, so it doesn't look like one safety's gone since our last selection.
And Andrew Mabuka, that's going to be a guy that I think is going to be a halfway decent football player. I still think that they're going to sign a safety. Okay, yeah, we can't. I mean, Malachi Moore, that's another guy that I've actually saw somebody in the chat, but I really think you gotta address safety here. I think that you have to address your safety. I understand that the tight end is massively important, but I also think that we could probably snag one in round 4.
Yeah,
I think you gotta go safety here. I am honestly okay with any of the top 3. Yeah. I'm okay with Castro, with Winston Jr., with Ransom. Ransom's got a little more upside. I mean, dare I say, even Jonas Sanker and Andrew Makuba, all 5 of those guys could be fits. But I would go best available safety here. Now, the thing is, we really want to go with a guy who's been more coverage.
Yeah.
So I think Lathan Ransom is probably going to be the guy. You could consider it a bit of a reach. Go real quick. Go to Sebastian Castro and hit show more. Okay, here we are. All right,
some good info there.
Yes. So if you
coverage
look right there,
63.7, run defense 76.2. This is very shallow analysis that we're doing. Just looking at these numbers, but just to give us an idea of which direction you would want to go.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you a good outline. Go ahead and go to Lathan Ransom one time.
Yeah. Also, just one other thing to throw in here. We're looking at snap counts in 2024. 154 snaps in the box, 465 in the slot, only 42 deep. So if you're trying to fill that void opposite Nick Cross as a deep safety, Sebastian Castro doesn't seem to be that guy.
Yeah, so go ahead and try Winston. Mm-hmm. All right, so the coverage grade is pretty bad. Now, the thing is, PFF, they do a good job. They really hone in well on quarterbacks. Yeah. I think quarterbacks and offensive grades are fantastic, but sometimes they do miss a little bit. Now, the last guy I want to look at is Ransom.
Yeah.
Now, that's going to be because you really need to have a dude who is going to be able to cover. He's going to be able to play the run. I mean, my goodness, look at that. And he was consistent.
Yeah.
Passer rating allowed 95.4. All right, that could definitely improve. And coverage drops 9 or 6.
Of those 3, this is the guy who has that most experience playing that deep safety role. Yes. With 490 snaps playing deep there. I'm okay with going Lathan Ransom. Are you sure Jeffrey Bossa is not on the board for you? Terrence Ferguson at tight end are the other names that I'm considering. I guess 2 Oregon guys, and then Lathan Ransom. Or you think safety, just because of we're operating as if the Colts roster going into the draft is the exact same as it is today.
Yes.
So safety is obviously going to be a huge need. I'm okay with taking Ransom here to fill that role.
Yeah, because otherwise we got to guess at who they'd sign, and that's a whole different episode. Go ahead and do Ransom. Let's go ahead and just knock the safety off. We've got 2 corners. We've got a safety. Like DSG Goodbar says here, that is a good call. I think it's a better call if you're talking about Cross being more of a cover guy. But yeah, it's also kind of like Rich Wheeler says Ransom moved well at the combine, and then Camo Scott Bryant says missed opportunity to trade back. Free agent quarterbacks are legit and good options. We're tight end and safety aren't as good. Could have gone Amon Warrior and Taylor and gotten an RB2 safety with the trade back. So that's fair. But what we're going to do here is we're going to see what falls to us in round 4, because this is really where we're kind of sort of pigeonholed a bit.
Yeah. But this is also kind of where we fall out of starter range, and we're not really expected. If you're going into the draft with day 3 starters and your expectation is that these guys you're drafting on day 3 are going to come in and start for you, you're in a rough spot already, and I think you've kind of already lost. So you kind of go into day 3 expecting maybe early on in day 3 you'll maybe find some rotational contributors here and there. For the most part, it's going to be special teamers and guys looking to make the roster when you get into rounds 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, and so I mean, we're seeing some guys. So Jacob Parrish, Jared Wilson, okay, Isaiah Bond. All right, Peebles. That's a guy that I've heard a lot of. There goes Makuba. Now that one's interesting because I really figured. Oh, Riley Leonard. That's pretty early for Riley Leonard. There's a chance. Dare I say, there's a chance that guy might not even get drafted. He can barely throw the football. We'll have to see there. I still think that the Colts, I know we're not guessing free agents here, but I think the Colts are going to address the competition with Richardson through free agency. Yeah. Okay, so right out of the gate, go to those tight ends.
All right. Harold Fannin went a couple of picks before us. We've got Gunnar Helm there. Ferguson's obviously off the board. And that is kind of the group that you're working with now at this point.
Yeah, so go to best overall, and then we'll scroll down to 113. Okay, so I mean, CJ,
we're already there. Not a ton of talent.
CJ West is a hell of a football player, but I think you gotta take a swing at a tight end here. I do think Gunnar Helm is probably at the back end and the last line of defense before you're out of a starting tight end. So I do think that you can still address your tight end position. I know Gunnar Helm might not be as sexy of a pick as Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland or Mason Taylor, which, look, Mason Taylor's my guy that fits the Colts. We felt you got to address that secondary, and we have. So now you're not going to be complaining about it. So I do think that this is the pick. I think that you got to go with Gunnar Helm here. I mean, he can block. He can at least get you some contributions in the passing game. Look, he's going to start. He's going to start. He's going to start just because that tight end room, unless Jelani Woods returns from the dead and literally just takes off like a rocket, I foresee Gunnar Helm absolutely starting. Now, I will say, like Steve, I believe it's Cowan, mentions here, you're hoping that they do sign a tight end. There's a couple guys out there now, guys like Juwan Johnson, guys like Evan Ingram. But the thing is, Helm, it's kind of like DSG Goodbar says there, he's not going to be this ridiculous athlete, but he's going to be absolutely the type of tight end that the Colts need. And he kind of resembles what they had with Jack Doyle. He's going to be that gritty guy who's going to block. He's probably going to catch you 45, 50 passes in a season, which, look, the entire tight end room last year, they had 39 catches, 4 different guys. Not acceptable. Kylan Granson led the charge, and he didn't even have 20 catches. So for me, I'm absolutely going Gunnar Helm here. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I would tend to disagree here, where I just don't think that Gunnar Helm is going to fit the athletic profile that Chris Ballard is even going to consider drafting. So I think we're in a situation here in round 4, the tight ends that are available on the board. I don't think there's one good enough to justify the 4th round pick here. I think any of those guys, you're just as likely to find an impact player in year 1 if you go into the street free agents that haven't signed yet at this point in late April. Maybe there's a guy like Gerald Everett still sitting there. Tyler Conklin might go a little, or might get signed pretty early. I mean, but there's veteran tight ends that you could come in and get the same production that you would out of a guy like Gunnar Helm, in my opinion. And obviously it wouldn't be that rookie that you're going to be able to build on the future with. But man, if we're thinking about this,
I want to hear where you're going.
Draft, I mean, there's some positions here. Tyler Shook here. I wouldn't hate taking a shot at quarterback. There's running backs, I think, up and down the draft board. I'm not super worried about getting one of those right now. I do kind of like Bashal Tutin here, kind of maybe targeting somebody that could fall later, or ETN maybe in next round when you come up to round 5. But yeah, man, tight end, I just wouldn't feel comfortable taking Gunnar Helm just because I don't think it's super likely that Chris Ballard would go that direction. Offensive line, I'm taking a look at a few guys. Chase Lunt out of UConn is a name that pops out. Willie Lampkin was the hit of the Senior Bowl. Lampkin was.
Plays multiple positions too, which you know how much Ballard loves that.
A guy like Miles Frazier, I think, is going to be a Chris Ballard target just because of his athleticism. But man,
who's best over? You know what, man? If you're not going tight end, if you're not going tight end, I think that you have to go CJ West.
CJ West, I would not hate that selection either. And
I mean,
it would be weird of Chris Ballard to not take a trench player in the first 4 picks of the draft. And I realize we're going all offense with, or I mean, all defense with the first 4 picks.
they need it.
Yeah,
They
it
need it
depends.
so bad.
I'd be okay with that. It depends on how you feel about the quarterbacks that are there. Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, Tyler Shook in the 4th round. Like, I mean, I've been on the record saying, man, if Chris Ballard really wants to extend his tenure, you can't pin it all on Anthony Richardson. I think you need to have a fallback option that you can turn to maybe as a last ditch effort to save your job. But I'm not deep into QB evaluations enough to be able to stand on the table for any of those guys, so I'm comfortable taking CJ West here as well.
You know what? We're going to go with a Noah pick. We're going to shock the world, and you just hope at this point that because look, there are some tight ends in free agency that could work out, but let's go ahead and do it. I love CJ West. I'm an IU fan. IU Kokomo grad, but IU nonetheless is what my degree says. So we'll go ahead and do it, man. That's a pick that screams. Fans are going to be so pissed, but that screams Chris Ballard. So the next one's going to be round 5, pick 13. So we've addressed 2 corners. We've addressed defensive interior and that depth. And that's a guy with starter upside, by the way. And then we've addressed safety. So really now you need depth, offensive line. You need a linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
You still need a tight end if there is one that makes sense. But at this point, you're probably picking a tight end and still signing a free agent. You know what I mean? Because you're probably not keeping Granson. Who knows about Mo? Even if you keep him, you've got Mo, Will Mallory, who's a question mark if there ever was one, and then Drew Ogletree. So you got 2 blockers and a receiving tight end. So, man, this draft has really resembled what Chris Ballard might do. Lou Anarumo must be sitting in that chair too, because he is getting all sorts of depth and he's getting a lot of things addressed here. So we're going to go ahead and spill into the 5th round.
So it did seem this whole offseason, the moves that they've made up to this point did seem to be very secondary focused, just in terms of the coaches that they brought in, with Chris Hewitt, Lou Anarumo. I mean, these are just, it's obvious, I think, during Chris Ballard's end of season presser that he was talking about defensive backs and the way that they played wasn't acceptable or up to par. So I think it's going to be a focus. I'm not sure if this much of a focus. I know we're hitting round 5 now, and we have not addressed tight end. We have not addressed running back. We haven't addressed linebacker. This is kind of the situation that you get put in if you have this many holes on the roster, and at this point have not made any moves in free agency. Obviously, that'll change when we go into next week and the week following. And then I see Trevor Etienne just picked up 2 picks before the Colts go on the clock here, which I think would have been a good target. But here we are on the board, pick 152, still a lot of needs available, but you're here in round 5. These guys probably aren't coming in to play significant roles for you at this point, and you'll just kind of take rotational snaps if that's the talent that you see available on the board.
Yeah, so you need linebacker, you need tight end, you need offensive line depth. Let's go to offensive line interior. Okay. Let's see what they've got sitting right there. Okay. You've got Jake Majors, you got Connor Colby, Miles Frazier is sitting right there.
Jackson Slater's also a guy I think the Colts could target.
Dylan Fairchild's another one. That's another one. There's some offensive linemen sitting there. Yeah, let's go best overall, and let's see who we got here. Okay,
sitting up there.
Brinding Stool's an interesting one. That's another guy that has some appeal. Kyle McCord, R.J. Oben, okay, Kobe King, Jackson Hawes. That's a guy that might have some upside. Mm-hmm. Man, I think that you desperately need to get more offensive line help. But the thing is, the guy that sticks out to me most, he's not until pick 212.
Yeah, who's that?
That was Miles Frazier. Yeah. So he's pretty far back. I think you could probably get him.
I mean, maybe that's something you even double up 6 and 7. You go in the interior. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go here. We have not addressed linebacker, running back, tight end. We're not going to get to all these, obviously, sitting here at pick or around 5.
It's like you said, it's what happens when you have this
Yeah.
many holes. You're not going to address them all. You're
Yeah.
just not, especially through the draft. That's why they got to spend some money in free agency. So, you know what? I really like addressing. I think at this point, you're just saying that you're going to be signing a tight end. I think that you're also probably going to be signing a quarterback. I don't think that they're going to go the draft. I think they're going to go more of a sure thing.
Yeah.
That's got a track record. A guy like Daniel Jones, he might not be the best passer. He's going to fit in that offense, though. You know, he's going to be able to run enough. I dare say that you got to go. You either got to go halfback or running back, or you got to go interior offensive line because you still have Braden Smith. You've got Matt Gonsalves on the outside. You've got Blake Freeland who has to prove himself. This is tough. I think that you're gonna want to go interior offensive line or running back, though. Who's available at running back?
Yeah. So I like Frazier. I like Slater. Like we've talked about on the interior.
Okay.
A guy that really jumps out at me is Bashal Tutin. Just the opportunity to be able to hit home runs without Jonathan Taylor on the field, I think is something you can take a chance on. I don't know if he has a ton of return experience, but I think in the NFL with the new kickoff return, that could be something that he could provide some versatility on. Always got to be thinking about special teams when you get here into day 3. But yeah, I mean, that's the name that jumps out to me that I don't think would be available. And it obviously addresses a big need on the roster.
Okay.
I think Ollie Gordon's also a name there that I like. But yeah, Tutin, I think, would be my vote from what we're looking at. If you've decided, and I'm going to say this every round until he's gone, Tyler Shook is not the guy at quarterback for you to take a chance on.
I think that there might be a chance he's a little overrated.
Yeah.
There's always that chance. But
this is round 5, so he's pretty poorly rated if he's here in round 5.
Yes. You know what? Go
Fedoni
ahead.
Also here at tight end, I like.
So I would say, hold on one moment, because there was one thing that I was unsure about with him. Okay, so you're talking about a guy who didn't have the most experience. I mean, he didn't really have the most receiving production.
Yeah.
But the thing is, man, I really like what you said about Bishal Tutin. Or I think that who was the offensive lineman you said?
Miles Frazier is kind of, or
Miles
Slater.
Frazier. Slater.
Yeah,
okay. Okay, let's see here. Is he tackle? Oh no. Okay, so he's going to be Sacramento State. So Jackson Slater is my pick if we do go with an interior offensive lineman, because he is completely overlooked.
Yeah.
He is going to be a guy that I think is going to have success as a rotational player. Let's take a look at his snaps. Okay, so left guard. He played left tackle too. Okay, that's fantastic. All right, I think that you got to go.
Tackle experience going inside and out.
I mean, that's still something. And I know it's only 5 snaps, but they also trusted him at least long enough at center. So this is a guy. He also, I mean, who do you have pulled up now?
This is Miles Frazier here. Looks like he has just filled in a little bit at tackle in 22 and 24, but has played significant snaps at both left and right guard. So I think that's an option. I think the odds of getting one of those guys next round is pretty high. So I'm just going to say Tyler Shook if you're going quarterback, Bashal Tutin if you're going running back, and then Fedoni at tight end as a last-ditch effort to get some more juice in the room there.
No, man, I think that you got to go Tutin.
Okay.
I think that you gotta add weapons in that backfield. I'm going Tutin. I know that he's got the ball security issues, but when I was interviewing him at the combine, he gave all of his credit, his 25 touchdowns over his last 2 college seasons, to his offensive line. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a guy that I think you're going to really enjoy having in the backfield. So we'll take Bishal Tutin. I know this has been a little bit of an unconventional draft, but I also think that there is a real possibility the Colts are going to sign a tight end.
Yeah. We're sitting here about 50 minutes, 2 picks to go. We've kind of gone over the guys. I'm assuming somebody's going to be there that we're going to be excited to take around 6 and 7. Probably not going to spend a ton of time on these last 2 selections.
Nah. Jackson Hawes, that's another good pick. Tyler Cooper's a solid pick. And see, that's one that I was intrigued by, was Brining Stool.
Yeah.
I thought that at Clemson he did good enough. He had like 99 catches his last 2 years, not even front loaded. We're talking 49 and 50. So there was some allure there. I know we're not taking a tight end. I know this is really, really against the grain, but I'm telling you, if the Colts sign a guy that's even at the level of Juwan Johnson, I really think that Shane Steichen can utilize him, maybe
Yeah.
even have a career year. I mean, he had 50 catches with the freaking Saints. Okay, like that was his best season of his career. So you're talking about Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler. Okay, so there's going to be some guys here. Now we still have to address interior offensive line, which we really expect there to be somebody here, and then there might be a
Linebacker,
late flyer.
tight end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, remember, if we're thinking like Ballard, you've got Jalen Jones starting. You've got Will Fry starting. I know he's a free agent, very likely to get a new contract. You've got Zaire Franklin starting. Okay. Those are three guys right there that are all seventh rounders.
Yeah.
Okay. And when Rodney Thomas was starting, seventh rounder out of Yale. So, I mean, Ballard nails the seventh round picks, and they end up being really good.
Yeah, and I imagine the Colts will end up selecting more than 7 times in this draft.
Oh,
just to keep it simple, there were no free agent signings in this mock draft. There were no trades in this mock draft. Tyler Shook sitting there in round 6. I will throw that out. I told you I was going to throw it out every time that he didn't get selected. And then we've got interior offensive line: Miles Frazier, Jackson Slater, still sitting there.
Both are. Oh my
goodness! Tight end. Luke Lachey. Looks like Fidone's gone.
Luke Lachey, though.
Take a look at linebacker.
Like if you, I mean, yeah, Luke Lachey. That's interesting, but I just think, I mean, I really do think that they are going to sign a quarterback. But the thing is, it's like DSG Goodbar says, you're also talking about Luke Lachey, who's from Iowa, which is where they produce tight ends like it's a freaking component. Like they just push those tight ends out on a conveyor belt. I think that I would go with Slater here.
Yeah.
Either that or Frazier, because Frazier he's got left and right guard ability. But man, Jackson Slater, I mean, he's got a lot of upside, man, and he's going to get overlooked by a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable putting our name on Slater. I know just the guy from Sac State will give him some love instead of the guy from LSU, just to balance things out a little bit. So we'll I'm good with going Jackson Slater here. Chris Ballard has mentioned he thinks that there's a lot of depth here on the offensive line in these later rounds. Very likely a selection that you could see happen. So we'll go ahead and take Jackson Slater there and see what happens with the last pick coming up in round 7. Too many needs to fill with this round 7 pick. It's not going to happen. So now we're just kind of looking for somebody who might be able to be a contributor or have some high upside that you can develop into something. Chris Ballard loves taking long shots on developmental guys in these late rounds. So yeah, somebody freak athleticism, someone that has a standout trait in one area, at least at their position. And we'll just kind of see what happens and what falls to us at this point, though. What's it going to be? Pick 230 or 234. I think they're picking next. You're just hoping they make the team, right? So you're not really hinging your draft. Really, by the time you get to round 7, the day one impact of your draft has already happened, and you're not going to grade any higher based on what you pick here in round 7.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is where you shore up depth. If you can get a guy to do that. All right. Now, look, I know people say what they say about Ballard, but when it comes to the draft, he's a great evaluator of talent. I think that he values athleticism a little too high. But I mean, guys, athletes, super athletes, they get hurt. There are times they just struggle with injury. Okay. But so far we've addressed 2 corners, top 2 picks. You got Will Johnson and you got Siobhan Ravel. Oh, hell yeah. Like if you're looking for corners, hell yes. Okay. And then you've got a safety. All right. Then we got a defensive interior. CJ West is going to be a baller. All right. He is going to at least be better than Raekwon Davis, who by the way just got cut not long ago, and Taven Bryan. And then, so that basically means you have to address it. And then you've got, we did interior offensive line, with a guy who's malleable. You can use him in multiple positions. By Tootin, you've got your running back. So I believe there was one more I'm missing. Am I?
Was that 6? Lathan Ransom? Did you mention him?
Oh no. So that's the safety that you got. So
Yeah.
I didn't even mention him. Okay. So I actually love what Patrick Rice said. Is Trey Weedig available? He is going to be a tackle. Because if he is, this is a guy that you should absolutely take. Oh my
Can't take 2
God.
Indiana prospects in the same draft, can you? Is that allowed?
Look at his position plays, though. Oh my sweet Lord. That guy's played
Interior
right
and
tackle,
exterior, yep.
right guard. He's played center. He's holy cow, man. Oh my goodness.
6'7", 319. If you've noticed, 2 reserve futures contracts that the Colts have signed has been a 6'11" tackle and a 6'9" tackle. They're obviously valuing length on the edges there.
Yeah, and I knew a little bit about Weedig, but I didn't know like that much. Real quick before I continue to water at the mouth at that kind of versatility, who do we have at linebacker?
At linebacker, I like how there's only 4 names left at tight end.
Oh my God, yeah, we whiffed on that position, but that's okay because I'm telling you, you can get a serviceable tight end in Shane Steichen's scheme, and you can make it work. You don't need. I mean, would it be great to get Tyler Warren? Of course, you don't need it. You don't necessarily absolutely need it.
So I'm just going to go through. I'm looking for anything that pops out coverage grade wise. Here on these linebackers, 64.7 at Georgia, pretty respectable.
Yeah, so I hate to say it, but like Jalen Walker is another guy that could play. I mean, if you go right there, I mean he's done it all. He's actually halfway decent at coverage, but he's going to be a guy that's also going to be used in blitzing schemes. Like he'll be out there in those sets when they need a little bit more linebacker, and they're gonna throw that guy at the quarterback. Man, why is the 7th round pick so freaking hard?
I say we go linebacker here, just to appease anybody that's looking at the snapshot at this when we post it on socials later of everybody we selected. At least linebackers on there, right? Offensive tackle, I think Trey Whittig is a possibility there. But yeah, I think we should go linebacker here. I think there's some names that we can consider. Gathan Bernadelle out of Stanford, Jalen Walker out of Indiana, Smail Mondin out of Georgia, Karen Reed out of Utah. I think there's names here that you can consider. I know, obviously, you mentioned Jalen Walker. Taking 2 people from Indiana feels weird, but maybe we do that for the locals watching the podcast tonight.
Yeah, and the thing is, any one of those 3 guys, 237, 243, or 244,
yeah,
they're going to be solid picks. Man, I know that it's 2 Indiana guys. I'm not even putting like my alma mater into this, but I would pick Jalen Walker. And if we're going with the linebackers here, I'm picking Jalen Walker.
Hey, let's do it.
Oh,
there's
man.
Nobody from Bowling Green available at this point. We'll take another
That's
Indiana,
right,
guys.
We had a guy from Bowling Green, but man, that might have started some pitchforks. Let's see what PFF grades us. I'm going to say a C- because we didn't select a tight end.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know really how they consider it, but I think in terms of all the picks that we made, we were at least pretty high in terms of the best players that they said were available. Obviously, opinions are going to vary pretty widely between teams on whether they were the best or not. That's how you see the unpredictability go on in the draft, and you see guys like Cole Strange get drafted in the first round that kind of blows everybody away. So we'll see plenty of those moments. Obviously, we weren't paying attention to a ton of picks that weren't the Colts picks. I'm sure there were some surprises if we were looking a little bit more closely.
Yeah, and so this one here. Okay, so they only come about due to where you take players versus their big board and the needs of each team. So basically what Patrick mentioned is that it's not really a reflection of your draft. And Bruce Brazel, my goodness, my friend, you came away with 12 picks. That's incredible. Um, okay, we got an A, we got an A minus, we got a B. Oh, we got
I
an F
do
for
not like that
Byshul
Tootin
Tootin.
pick, but I'm sticking
Woo!
to it.
Goodness gracious, they hated that one. Wow. So we took 5 defensive players.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
say that on your bold predictions episode, that's exactly the number you threw out there.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that many defensive players. I think that you also get your backup running back. There's other guys that you could get, but you don't need to value a higher pick on the running back. You just
Yeah.
don't. And quarterback, you probably are going to address that in free agency. I know Ballard said it's on the board, right? Everything. If you really want to push Richardson, it makes sense to draft a quarterback, but I think it makes just a little more sense to pay a cheap deal
Yeah.
to a free agent QB, a guy like Daniel Jones, or dare I say Marcus Mariota, just a guy who's going to go in there with some veteran experience. But anyway, we're at the 1 hour mark. Noah, what do you think about our draft here? I think that it's perfectly fine. As
Yeah.
long as the Colts do sign a tight end. If they don't sign a tight end, you run it back with Mo as your number one. That's just roster malpractice, as Andrew Moore used to say.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's hard to do it without making any moves in free agency, without doing any trade backs or anything like that. It's going to be impossible to fill every need that you've got. And man, in terms of the players that fell to you, I'm super stoked about Will Johnson at 14. I'd be super stoked at Siobhan Ravel. I have pick 45. So maybe in terms of just team building practice, that's not the best thing to do, is just exclusively focus on your secondary in the first 2 days of the draft. But in terms of talent, I'm really happy with who we came away with there.
Yeah, you know what? I'm cool with this draft. I'm not going to be mad at it. So let's go ahead, and we have to kind of fire through these like a cannon.
Yeah.
But we've got some news and rumors, people, that are big news and rumors. And I realize this new webcam shows so much of my office here. Holy cow! So we're going to get to the news and rumors, and people, these are pretty big, but like I said, we're going to have to get through them pretty fast. Number one, the Colts release Raekwon Davis. This is something that we absolutely saw coming. You save over $6 million. What are your thoughts on this? I'm pretty sure that it's one of the reasons that we brought CJ West to the Colts.
Yeah. You texted me right when it happened. I sent you the text back that it was a no-brainer, but I'm honestly surprised that maybe not surprised that it happened, but relieved that the Colts saw it the same way, right? That's not really been in Chris Ballard's MO to cut ties with players you already have on contract. I think it's a step in the right direction, right? Of evaluating things logically and taking emotion out of it, and making the right decision or business decision there. Is it necessarily indicating that more cuts are to come? I don't know. I think there's obviously some candidates on the table. Save some money cutting Tyquan Lewis, Samson Ebukam, Braden Smith. There's more opportunities there for moves like this to happen. But yeah, this one was the most obvious for sure.
Yeah. So then the next one, shit. The next one is, I'll go with this one first before we get to the last one, and that's, is Dio Dangbo too expensive for the Indianapolis Colts? It was released that he might command a market of $16 to $20 million.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just think that is a little too expensive. It's a little too rich. You can't go based off of just the numbers, because while he did only have 3 sacks, he led the team in quarterback pressures.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a legitimate guy that if you get him on that kind of deal, it might seem like it's expensive, but if he gets with the right scheme, he could be an absolute terror. They called him Hurricane Dio for a reason.
Yeah. And Chris Ballard's got to be really upset if he takes a guy that he was so high on and talks so highly about. He develops, in that interview he did during the combine, he mentioned that he's on the exact career trajectory and exactly where they thought he would be and wanted him to be. They want him to stay with the team, right? But 16 to 20 million is a huge number. You can't keep him and Samson Ebukam on the same team if that's the way you end up going. I think you have to find that money somewhere if you end up paying Dio Adengbo that. Maybe that even means it comes at the expense of a guy like Tyquan Lewis, where you could save another about 5 million by moving on from him. But you kind of backed yourself into this situation when you did the 5th-year option on Kwity Paye's deal. Right, where you're paying him $13 million this year, and there's no way out of that $13 million. He's getting that regardless. So if you don't see Kwity Paye as a guy that you're signing to a long-term extension, then maybe that's costing you, that 5th-year option is costing you a chance to retain a guy like Dio.
Yeah, before we get to the last one, we have to highlight the CFO super chat. When is the mock draft when is the mock draft going to be where Anthony Richardson is traded to Seattle? Which, by the way, when Pete Carroll was the coach there, he said that they took a hard look at Anthony Richardson. So I could see him fitting that scheme back when Carroll was running it. But Seattle for DK Metcalf and pick swap, then Ebicom and pick swap for Trey Hendrickson. That is complete and utter chaos. Now, I will
the
say
Madden franchise there. That's what that trade is.
Yeah, man. I will say, though, good God, DK Metcalf and a Shane Steichen scheme. You talk about, he's the kind of guy that will blow you away with the ball in his hands, and he'll blow you away with the ball not even in his hands till he catches it downfield, and he can also catch a screen and just run right through everybody because that man's the closest thing to an Olympic track athlete I've ever seen in my life. So, but Patrick, thank you so much, my friend. As always, this is why you're the CFO. The last one we're going to get to is this one makes too much sense for me. It would cost so much, and maybe a couple of the guys that we selected aren't even going to get picked because of this man. But Trey Hendrickson's been allowed to seek a trade. Guys, this isn't just anybody. Two things. He's had 35 sacks over the last 2 seasons, and it's 17.5 per season. Absolutely insane production. He was number 1 of all defensive ends in quarterback pressures. Guess who else that means? Myles Garrett. He pressured the quarterback more than Myles Garrett. Do you think that this is a trade the Colts will execute? I think it's one they should consider, if for no other reason because of the ties that he's got with Louis Anarumo. And if you let Dio walk, you're going to need something else in that defensive edge room that's not necessarily just a draft pick.
Yeah, this is the kind of trade or the level of trade, the kind of player that's on the market that you usually just write off when you're talking about Chris Ballard and the Colts. But then you've got to consider the obvious ties, the timing of Louis Anarumo leaving Cincinnati and him requesting a trade right after that. Obviously, there's some contract stuff that's going on in Cincinnati. That's another thing to consider when you're talking about a trade is you're not going to trade for him unless you're extending him, right? So you're giving up whatever it'll take to grab him. Maybe that's a second round pick. I think that would be reasonable for the Bengals to ask for a second round pick for a guy like Hendrickson who led the NFL in sacks last year. But then you're giving up the second round pick and in addition 32 to 33 million a year, I'm sure, on that extension. So you have to be prepared for that. We mentioned that with signing Dio Adengbo to a 16 to 20 million or whatever he's going to command in free agency. You can throw that out of the window if you're going for a guy like Trey Hendrickson. Probably moving on from Kwity Paye after that 5th-year option because you're not going to be able to afford keeping Latu and Kwity Paye and Trey Hendrickson there. Yeah, and then like Patrick brought up, traded for Buckner in the past. It's a move that he's made, right? It's along the trenches on the defensive line. That's always going to be somewhere that Chris Ballard emphasizes. But if it's for a second round pick, it wouldn't be crazy if the Colts did it, but that would kind of symbolize a kind of a seismic shift and moving on from a lot of the personnel that's already on that defensive line because you would have to make that money up somewhere.
Yeah, at the end of the day, people, like Patrick said, Chris Ballard knows his seat it's not even hot anymore. It's on fire, okay? He absolutely has to do something big. He can't just go and tiptoe through the draft, tiptoe through free agency. I wouldn't be shocked if you see a trade up. I wouldn't be shocked if you see a trade in general. I wouldn't be shocked if you see a big-time free agent signing, or dare I say it, a big-time free agent signing, a trade, and then picking aggressively. Maybe not a trade up. I think if those first 2 scenarios happen, you're not going to see a trade up in the draft. That's a little too aggressive for Chris Ballard. But, man, at the end of the day, he is vying for his job. He has to do something different than what he has. But that's our show, guys. We're almost at an hour and 10 minutes. You guys are amazing for sticking around. If you liked what you saw, please like the Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow Indianapolis Colts on SI, on X, at Colts on SI. Subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube. Click the bell to turn on the notifications. If you want to listen, well, just subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. We are everywhere that you listen to podcasts. And, of course, if you want to have your question or comment highlighted on the show, just throw it in the chat. We always appreciate super chats, but we're not the kind of guys that are going to sit here and just blast you with super chat requests. That's not how we operate. We enjoy you guys being here. And if you so want to donate to us, then absolutely hell yes. We'll probably still show your comment even if you don't. So, but you know what? We will be back on Monday because it's already been chaotic. Okay. Yep. fully expect it to continue to be chaotic. And guess what, people? Legal tampering starts on Monday. So it's going to be fun.
We
It's
might
going to
have
be
a
an
signing by
exciting
the
week.
time we go live on Monday.
That's right. And there's guys that need to be retained. So we'll have to see what happens. But everybody, please enjoy your Thursday. Enjoy your Friday. Absolutely, as hell, enjoy your Saturday. And we will be seeing all of you guys on Monday night yet again for the Horseshoe Huddle. So until then, take care.